Hi everyone, today we are doing day 5 of our 30 days of watercolor flowers, and today we are painting the hibiscus. Hibiscus are really big, beautiful flowers, and they're actually very easy to paint. So we start with this middle petal. It's kind of the central petal, and this is for if you're painting a flower that's kind of pointing to the left. Then we're going to paint a petal on either side of the central petal. You can see how my petals are kind of triangular shaped in theory, and they're really wavy. There's also 5 petals, so we do these small triangular shapes in the back to represent petals that are hidden. And then it has a very long stamen with fluffy little filaments at the end. And then for the stem, you're going to do a very long stem. It's brown, and then the leaves coming off of it are green. I also did a couple of buds. I actually have hibiscus in my front yard, and there's always tons of little flower buds all over the branches, so I thought we should represent that. And then some pretty medium-sized basic leaves with some veining in the flower petals as well. Now to start, we're going to mix up some red. I'm using some cad red and some alizarin crimson to get this beautiful color. I also watered it down pretty good, so it's not very highly concentrated with pigment, so we can add some more pigment in a little bit. So this first main petal is heart-shaped, and that's because we're leaving space at the top for the center stamen. So I created a little bit of a divot. Then it's going to come down towards the bottom and curve off. And I also kind of wiggled my brush around to create a wavy edge for this petal. For these petals on either side of the main petal, I want you to think of looking at the main petal from the side. So I'm kind of painting half of a heart shape. I'm starting with a very pointy edge as the petal comes into the center, but leaving space for the center stamen. And then I am swooping down into a circular shape at the end, but I'm also making sure to have a really wavy edge, kind of wiggling my brush around to get that wavy edge, because the petals on a hibiscus are really delicate and wrinkly in a way, and so they have this beautiful wavy texture. So if you can find a way to add that by moving your brush around, you'll give the flower a lot of movement and feeling. You'll be able to feel when you're looking at it that it has that wavy delicateness. So the next petal we're going to lay on top of the last petal we just painted, and it's more like a moon shape, like a half circle moon shape. We don't want very much of this petal to be seen because it's really hidden in the back. And then the last petal, because there are 5 petals on a hibiscus, is kind of a triangular shape, filling in the gaps. And you can see between all of the petals, we've left white space so you can have a visual distinction between each one. Now, while the petals are all still wet, I'm going in with some very concentrated red. So very little water, really high pigment, and I'm tapping into the corners that are coming into the middle so that we can get a nice variation, a nice blend with some shadow. And then you're very quickly going to want to turn your brush around and use the other end to very gently put in some veins into these flower petals. So I'm just pressing down into the paper very gently, and the watercolor flows into the indentation marks that I'm making and actually makes them darker, so you can paint the veins in a more natural, organic looking way without painting them with the tip of your paintbrush. And then after I moved a lot of that paint around with the other end of my paintbrush, I just went back and got some more highly concentrated red on my brush and dabbed that into the corners to just really continue to beef up the color and the contrast. We're going to let the flower dry and work on the stem and the greenery. So hibiscus are typically found on a hibiscus tree. So the branches are brown, and then the greenery off the branch is green. And so we're going to place our single brown stem, and then we're mixing up some green and yellow to get a very bright lime green color for the greenery. So we're going to start with a flower bud, and I like to create an oval shape while leaving some white space. So if the whole general idea of the flower bud is an oval, but there's white space, it'll look like it's circling around and that there's pieces of it forming an entire bud, if that makes sense. And then just continue. Here's another little bud. So in the same way, making that circular oval shape, but leaving some white space. And then for the leaves, I like to do the 2-stroke leaves where I'm leaving a vein in the middle. So you start with light pressure on your brush, push down for full pressure, and then lift for light pressure. Do that 2 times on either side, leaving white space in the middle. And then for smaller, simple leaves, you'll just use the shape of your brush to push down and drag out little leaves. Now I'm picking up some indigo and I'm mixing it with the green that we already have on our palette. I'm creating this dark green to go into the leaves while they're still wet to add depth and variation, contrast, shadowing. So I'm really focusing the color towards the base of the leaf where it's attached to the little stem coming off the branch. All right, now we're going to focus on the center stamen. And to get the color for the center stamen, I'm starting with red, and then I'm sweeping some green into the red. Because they're complementary colors, they cancel each other out, so we get a nice, shadowy, muted red for the center stamen. I'm starting really, really high, and I'm curving a little bit down into that center space that we've left open for the stamen. You can make a straight center stamen, but adding curved lines really adds movement to your piece, which also adds interest and an organic feel. And I'm really just adding a lot of color at the base of this stamen to kind of flow into the petals. Now, using this same color, I'm going to make 3 small marks at the top of the center stamen. That is just pretty classic on a hibiscus. There's a darker center markings, and then they have the fluffy yellow filaments for where the pollen is. So we are picking up some really bright yellow, and very lightly we're going to tap in some pigment just around the top third of the stamen. Now we're pretty much done, but I really want to increase the contrast on the flower petals. So we're going to pick up a little bit more red. And now that everything is dry, we're going to have a little bit of a harsher line and add that into the corners and in other areas where we want to add shadow or just a little bit of contrast for interest. And our hibiscus is done. So now the only thing left to do is to add it to our 30-day watercolor flower chart in the day 5 spot. And it's just pretty self-explanatory, so cute, so easy. Thank you so much for being here today with me on day 5 while we painted hibiscus. I will see you all tomorrow for day 6.